scene setter. We're going to stay with smart data for our next session, and we're going to go deeper into what it actually looks like within financial services. And we have, of course, had open banking at the start. Smart data is what happens when you move from opening up one pocket of data to a whole economy based on content-based sharing. So we're going to discuss this with a fantastic panel. We've got the Senior Public Policy Manager at Monzo, Jess Bilcock. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Excellent, nice to see you. Co-founder and CEO of Ctrl-Shift, Liz Brandt.
Morning, everybody.
Morning. FCA's Director of Intelligence and Digital, Ian Phoenix.
Good morning, everybody.
And co-founder and CEO of Yaspa, James Neville. How are you?
Good morning, very well, thank you.
Good. Well, Liz, let's start with you. What can we learn from open banking implementation that's going to inform the expansion of the smart data revolution?
Well, I think Marion covered quite a bit of it, actually, to be honest with you. The most important piece, I think, is the commercial model that sits behind it, because that sits behind incentives and that sits behind a sustainable model. And I think what we did with open banking was we pushed really hard with that competition order, but actually what we need is a innovation and incentives order. I think that's what we need now. So I'm looking to the FCA,
okay,
my friend here, to bring us that innovation and incentive model.
All right. James, tell us briefly what Yaspa does and how it uses open banking, first of all.
So we're an instant payments business that connects identity and money. So it was our mission statement to reduce fraud and friction online by providing identity at the point of payment. So we combine account information services, as you know, AIS and PIS and a stablecoin on a payment flow. So when you arrive at an operator merchant website, you can kind of pre-push your financial identity. And I think financial health is really important in a lot of the regulated markets that we talk about. It's so much better to get financial data directly from a consumer than to look at a CRA that's 3 months out of date.
So that use of personal data in open banking improves financial health.
Yeah, 100%. So 2 ways of looking at it. Like, one is, I think kind of Jess will talk about personal finance management, but in kind of some of the other markets, let's talk kind of gambling. People have gambling addictions. Like, it's useful for operators to be able to tell when somebody has a degrading financial health position. That could be, they've missed a loan payment, they're not buying certain things they used to. They bought Starbucks historically every week or every day for all of a sudden that stopped. What changes that kind of financial behavior? But also, if they're accelerating spending money on gambling sites at 2 o'clock in the morning, surely you need to intervene. And you don't see that with a credit reference agency. You only see that with somebody's actual financial data in real time.
So just tell us how that works in practice. What role is open finance playing in delivering this next generation of personal financial management tools?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think from Monzo's perspective, a great example of this can actually be seen in our home ownership tool. So Monzo has a tool in the Monzo app at the moment that allows our customers to see their third-party mortgages in our app. It was designed broadly to solve kind of 3 key customer problems, the first of which is visibility, so to help customers understand basic information about their mortgage. The second is repayments, to help them understand and assess the impact of making overpayments over the lifetime of their mortgage. And the third is to do with switching, so taking some of that friction out of the kind of information gathering portion of the external switching flow for customers. Since we launched it in 2023, we've seen roughly 20% adoption by eligible users, which is significant considering we're really kind of papering over the cracks of a lack of open finance regime in the UK. Monzo combines data from a number of different data sources, whether that be CRA data, land registry data, ONS data, but access to real-time lender data would really help us supercharge the support we could deliver to our customers via this tool. It would allow us to do things like offer better, more personalized insights about their mortgage, such as, the percentage of their overpayment allowance they have left in this calendar year, right the way through to supporting them to take the action after they have the insight. So supporting them to set up that overpayment if that's the right thing for them to do. I mean, from our perspective, it's really just the tip of the iceberg, though, in terms of what could be delivered.
So Ian, we've got Liz looking towards you. What are the FCA's ambitions in supporting innovation?
So hopefully you will have seen that we published the FCA's ambition about open finance just last week. It is something we are very excited about inside the organisation. We think that the opportunity for growth and innovation across the UK economy is second to none. But equally, we are very aware that the choices that we make around the infrastructure that supports and the architecture that supports open finance will set things around the who trusts open finance, who will be the players that can be connected, who will be in charge of removing people from that ecosystem. And all of that will challenge how quickly innovation can scale and the pace from our previous panellists that it can be adopted across the UK. We think that there's a really great opportunity for us to be the global leader. One of the things we've been talking about internally is we don't think that there's a model out there that we should copy, but we think that we should definitely be learning the lessons of other geographies and other jurisdictions so that we can be the best in the world at open finance. Our innovation sprints have been showing us that we are beginning to see what are the signals that are coming from industry that firms would like to see in order to make this a successful implementation for the UK. We've got some very early signals that are coming through. We've done testing on some specific use cases around mortgages and in open finance, but also small and medium enterprise finance, because we know that liquidity and the efficient deployment of capital are the things that will support growth and innovation for the UK. We have published some research recently. We have more research coming out about the different models that might be supportable for open finance. And later this year, we are intending to pull together some more technology and policy sprints so that you, with us, in collaboration, can test what the models will be and which ones will be most effective in making sure that we can take all of the opportunities from open finance.
Mm-hmm. Liz, what else do you want to put on Ian's plate?
Oh, Ian, what a job. Well, if you look at internationally, and you're right, I mean, there's lots of people who've done lots of things. We can learn from lots of them. But I think the thing that everybody's missing is the consumer orchestration layer, which is the layer, in fact, which many of the big tech companies dominate in. And once you get that consumer orchestration layer...
What does that mean, consumer orchestration?
That's where the data enables us to move the data around from lots of different places and make decisions as individuals. But that service isn't something we just make up. That's something that businesses create. So that is a very valuable, very sticky part of the market. Designing that and architecting that so that we all see the value and the infrastructure providers see the value and the service providers like banks and insurance companies, pension providers that see the value, that's really critical. And I see us all very focused on the trust frameworks, the infrastructure, but not so much at that level. So once you got through this bit, Ian, it'd be great if you could get to that orchestration layer piece. But I think it's to your point, which is how do we ensure that we both regulate it and govern it and ensure that we see the value?
Yeah, I think that is absolutely one of the things that we're seeing and hearing from industry is data is the key. Data is the part of the economy, smart data accelerators, the smart data government strategy. We hear this all the time. What does it really mean in practice is how can we package up the data so that comes with consent, but also it comes with a context so that decisions can be made in the right place throughout the open finance infrastructure. And that, I think, is one of the things we really need to crack together.
It's a very different set of thinking. It's very different from thinking about it as a payment service. It's about data market, and it's a really different headset they have to.
Jess, what would you add to this?
I suppose, if I can be cheeky, the one thing that we'd really like to see from policymakers moving forward is just slightly more ambitious timelines. So from our perspective, customer appetite isn't going anywhere for this. We know that our customers want more support to reach their financial goals, but the opportunity cost of inaction here is quite significant. So if we don't act, if we as the regulated industry in this room today don't start moving this forward at pace, we are going to see this activity move outside the regulatory perimeter. We're already, like...
What does that mean?
So like many people in this room, I'm sure they've also heard reports of customers starting to look to use AI tools or LLMs to get the advice that they're looking for that to help them meet their goals and get that personal financial management support. It's not an outcome that we as Monzo would be seeking for our customers. So from our perspective, really, it's a bit of a rallying cry if we can try and get this done as soon as possible, because, like I say, the opportunity cost is huge here.
Besides speed, what else would you add to the regulator
I will
inbox?
definitely add momentum. Sorry, just keep. We were promised by the OBIE that at the precipice of coronavirus, they would apply the ability to gain personal data, so name, address, date of birth on an AIS transaction. That would be amazing for onboarding. So you arrive somewhere, you identify with your bank, you identify with your insurer, maybe the kind of triangle of people that have known you for a long time, your bank, your mobile phone co, your insurer, triangulate that. You don't need a proof of address or a kind of identity document. We've stalled from that, and we've not really gone back there. NatWest were, as a commercial bank, offering up that service at a cost. None of the other banks stepped up. That was a promise around around the coronavirus time, and that would have been super fascinating for moving this industry forward.
Okay. Got a lot in your inbox. Anything to respond?
Well, I think my boss is in the audience and we're just finalising my objectives, so thank you all very much.
Liz, did you want to come in on that?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I'm seeing that flies under the radar is big businesses actually are already starting to move. To your point, Monzo's already delivering some of these services. So what I find interesting, and I think it was covered in the last panel as well, is in the UK, businesses tend to sit and go, right, okay, regulator, what are you going to tell us to do? And then when the regulator tells them to do something, they walk away having said no already, and then work out what they're not going to do. And that's the kind of relationship that has been set up for decades. And I think that relationship has to change. What we need is businesses on the front foot. We need regulators on the front foot walking down the aisle together. I don't think they're going to get married, but maybe that analogy doesn't work. But they need to walk together to make this work, because it's going to be a very dynamic market. It's going to move incredibly fast. But to your point, businesses are already moving. So there's multiple millions. We're working with companies where they're investing multiple millions into products and services that already make this happen. So although it won't necessarily be the sustainable model forever, because they'll need smart data to be in play, they are already aligning, they are already setting up their own type of scheme. So they're already making money, and lots of money, out of this data. And that's what we need. We need that entrepreneurial spirit with the data, ensuring that it's safe, easy to use, but creating value for everybody in the room.
Well, speaking of entrepreneurial spirit, where else do you take inspiration from in terms of other markets or other sectors in terms of an effective approach?
So we look at the CRAs, obviously how they kind of qualify an individual's financial health, FICO scores and the like. That's one, like how lenders approach not so much on a pure data basis. I mean, look, for example, I'm refinancing a house right now. Some of the hoops you have to jump through. It should just be about the data I get from my bank and other sources. Instead, I'm pulling out salary slips. I'm pulling out bank statements. Why do I need a bank statement? All those things kind of glued together. I think when we started this business, I was more obsessed with identity than I was with money. I was obsessed with identity as finding a way to reduce fraud in payments. So we were starting to think about, to your point, Liz, about tokenizing identity so you could represent it. So a data marketplace where you could put all this stuff in one place, and then several disparate parties could connect to the same thing. I think that's a bold vision. It's never we weren't able to enact on it, and I haven't seen anyone else quite get there yet. That's something for the government to tackle, I think. Digital ID, all those things surrounding would be really helpful as well.
Yeah, I think, as I say, some of the architectural choices that we make today, as a lifelong technologist, talking to another technologist, many others in the room, if we were to go for something as a purely centralised model, that creates concentration risk and brittleness in the system. If we go for an entirely decentralised system, that creates governance and supervision risk at the other end. And so this is where we need to be working with industry to really design what is the right approach that we should be considering. On the digital verification and digital identity, I'm lucky enough to be an observer on the City of London Corporation's panel, which are bringing together industry parties to make sure that there can be some sort of interoperability around this, because it should be about trust and verification that underpin the entire system. Without that, we will run the risk of asking consumers for all of their data, or businesses for all of their data every single time they go to do a new transaction, such as refinancing or applying for a new commercial product, whatever it may be. And that will just put grit in the system, and that will not stick with consumers, because consumers expect much more in the world of AI, where they can just go to an LLM and say, tell me what I should do with X or Y.
Yeah. Let's take some inspiration from other markets or sectors. I know that you look at different geographies. Energy is one of the things that smart data is going to be tackling.
Yeah, so we are seeing interesting responses to this global opportunity in different countries, and a lot of that reflects the culture, the political environment. So if you take somewhere like
Saudi Arabia.
Saudi, exactly, where they've totally centralized, to your point, they've centralized the solution. They've got the same component parts, but it's centralized. So they've got the digital verification services, they've got the actual governing structure, but it's centralized. Whereas you take somewhere like Nepal, they've totally decentralized. So they've got digital verification in people's hands, they've got data and data intermediaries in people's hands. So please take note, DCIT are looking at data intermediaries. They've already come out on a consultation. Data intermediaries that act on your behalf. These aren't credit referencing companies, etc. These are data intermediaries as part of our data infrastructure. This is going to be very exciting for the UK. But Nepal have gone down that very decentralized approach, 500% increase in GDP from a very small level, by the way, but they have, and driven by the king, right? So some of this stuff, where it gets sponsored from, also really makes a difference about how fast it can move. Talk about CMA, talking about FCA, talking about where it comes from, the Treasury, etc. Where it gets sponsored from really, really makes a difference. But also, so does actually what the market is that you're talking about. So you mentioned the energy market. We've been doing a lot of work in the energy market. And in the energy market, a lot of this stuff is actually embedded in physical kit, right? In people's homes. So we've got smart meters that have software in them, that's got service level agreements in them, that's contracted out to large companies that have millions of these things, right? They've got to upgrade all of that to get that to work effectively. So we've got a different environment there again, but at the same time, in the energy market, it is being driven by the market to decentralize, because we're all getting EVs and solar panels, heat pumps, etc. We have to have decentralized data in a market that's actually heavily centralized. So they've now got this massive challenge of two-way flow. But in that, we are reckoning there's about a 30 billion smart data opportunity. But to the point of let's go faster, we think actually that market is currently being architected. And we think, and working with the market, we've identified not only that 30 billion opportunity, but also that 60% of it potentially goes to unregulated bodies that sit outside that market, that take the value, which leaves all of our infrastructure burdened with the cost and no value. So the design of it is not simple, but it's not beyond the wit of woman, to be frank.
Jess, I wonder if you could cast your mind into the future. You mentioned it was the tip of the iceberg of what you could do. If you could answer or finish the sentence, what if we could, what would that look like for Monzo?
I think that looks like full end-to-end support in helping our customers meet their financial goals. So a financial goal looks different for everyone in this room even. It could be you want to overpay your mortgage because you want to pay it off early. You may have debt that you want to prioritize. You may be saving for a house, a family, all of those different things. But we want to be able to provide that end-to-end support to help people meet those goals quicker, faster. And really, this is about driving not just resilience in customers, but also about driving growth. Customers that are more engaged are more likely to switch. We'll see greater competition in the market. So it's a slightly ambitious end state, I think, but hopefully achievable.
What about you, James? What does that look like for you? What if we could?
I'd like to be able to arrive at any website or service and to be able to present myself with my full financial identity and financial health without the need for needless documents, purple, blue, passport books, whatever you call them, and to be able to share that selectively and manage that consent going forward. And by the way, I still don't like that word consent. I think it's a really awful word. I think we discussed that. It scares consumers. But to be able to present your digital ID, your financial health to make services move faster, and have the OBIE and the FCA support us in doing that would be great in the UK. Europe needs to do the same as well.
Liz, what about you?
I want to get on and do my garden and stop being the warm body integration unit that's currently being asked of me every Sunday morning when I have to get all these bits of paper and send it off to all sorts of people. I want an agent to act on my behalf, governed. So it turns up and deals with all that admin, life admin. Just get rid of it. Just get my agent, give it the authority, give it the governing structure so it doesn't go off and do something really weird, and let me go to my garden.
All right, how are you going to do it, Ian?
With industry, we can only do it in collaboration with all of the firms that are here with us today and outside of the room. We do regularly hold tech sprints, policy sprints. We regularly publish research into the opportunities around this. We want to be working in partnership with you to identify what are the right use cases that we should be considering. We've built a PRISM tool, which is industry facing. I think it's a world first, again, from the FCA. I'm slightly biased in that. But it's there to test what's the real value behind these use cases. One of the things that we also need to think about is that we don't just build open finance for a million different individual use cases. We need to make sure that this is the right architecture and ecosystem that can support the whole economy, regardless of the sector, so that people can have that vision when they're not a warm body integration unit, but they can just get out and enjoy the sun.
Thank you so much. So thank you very much to Jess, to Liz, to Ian, and to James. Let's give them a warm of applause.